Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This week we are, of course, discussing Too Far, an episode of the show. It's the 29th of December, so sort of hope you have a good New Year's Eve in a couple
Happy
days.
New Year, and I'm going to be the first to say that we're probably going to stop wishing you Happy New Year's and Merry Christmases and stuff like that after this.
Well, no, annoyingly, the next episode is the 1st of January, so...
Ugh, alright then.
But
know now, if something happens and we have to miss 1 week, we're fucked.
I know we've made all these. Yeah, it's true. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, I forgot about that. The worst part as well is I've just realised, Chris. Next week is the start of the next bomb.
Ugh. They feel like so much work, the bombs.
They do. They do, but they're also usually very good. And there's a couple of good ones coming up.
Okay.
So it'll be worth it.
So should I talk about Too Far?
Yes.
So
What
I really want to keep singing the Doug theme tune, which I've done on the last episode of this and the last episode of Fringe Observers. I will resist singing the Doug theme tune and try and do it on the next Nothing But Static instead. So they're working together. They're looking at blueprints.
You carry on, Chris. I'm just going to give you some backing music to your description of the episode. You just carry on, mate.
So they sorry. So they're looking at blueprints, and then Peridot requests that Garnet unfuse. Ooh, bad idea, Peridot. So Peridot gets tied to a fence. By the way, throughout this episode, Garnet is against the cows, and it's hilarious. So
I'm going to stop now because that was getting quite. It was annoying even me. So the joke died. Carry on.
So they
Woo. No,
Garnet's fighting cows. It's amazing. Not visibly, but
it's like, can I just point out before we go to it, because we probably won't come back to that because it's not a big plot point. But what a strange, it's funny, but I really don't understand where that came from. It's really out.
That's what I love about it. There's no setup. There's no real payoff. It's just referenced throughout. It's brilliant.
No real payoff is exactly how I would describe that element.
I blame the cows.
Yeah, it's exactly what makes it funny, but I still don't understand what they. At some point, was that an actual concept? And they went, nah, it's ridiculous. Let's just make it like a silly side plot, and not actually explain it. It's very funny. Anyway,
it's amazing though.
Yeah, it is good.
So Peridot, they conclude that they should go to the kindergarten to get a drill head. Stephen and Amethyst, who have been getting on well with Peridot because they find her different names for things amusing, decide to go with her. Mm-hmm. They go with her, and when they get to the kindergarten, Peridot starts talking about all the gems, criticising them all, and basically saying that Amethyst should be the one in charge. Because, in her opinion, Garnet doesn't count because it's a fusion. Pearl's just a pearl, as discussed in the last episode. But Amethyst should be bigger and not stronger, but bigger and more threatening than she is. She talks about how she clearly came out at a different time compared to all the other.
Yeah, I think it's 500 years too late is the phrasing.
How that would make her smaller and not bigger, who knows? But anyway,
I think that's actually a gem thing. I think that's legitimately that's. I think if a gem stone in the earth in actual, not in the show but in reality goes, I think they can get smaller or crushed or compressed or something. The longer they're in the earth.
This episode did make me just wish I knew more about gems because it's revealed that she's a quartz. So I was like, is that a relation to Rose? I'm confused. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Mm-hmm. So she said she should be bigger and stuff. So Amethyst gets quite upset by this, and they go back and their relationship is clearly damaged. Peridot then, Stephen tells Peridot that she's hurt her feelings. So Peridot apologises via the voice recorder that Stephen has given her. First of all, the machine goes a bit crazy and Stephen attempts to stop it. And in that kerfuffle, Peridot pushes Amethyst out the way. And there's this, we'll talk about that in a bit. And then, so she apologises, saying that she's the best gem here and she's sorry. Amethyst says thanks. and we're all good, all happy days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of those things where last week it was mainly comedy. This week there's a fair bit of comedy, but there's a fair bit of tantalising. There's some tantalising plot points just sort of laid there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the quartz thing is interesting, but I don't know if that's interesting to me because I don't understand gems. Which could be the case. I thought, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like, so there's a scene. So Dan, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Yes.
J.K. Rowling said before that film came out that the film hints more overtly at things than the books do, but that, they're right to do that. So the film comes out, and there's a scene at the end where Hermione and Harry hug, and it's just a natural hug, and it's all cool. And then they stop hugging, and Ron and Hermione look at each other, and they don't know what to do, and they end up shaking hands. And it's interpreted as Ron and Hermione like each other, so any kind of physical contact would make them awkward, and it's a really sweet kind of awkward moment, hinting at Ron and Hermione being together in the future and liking each other. That there were just echoes of that when she pushed her out of the way, and they end up like kind of hugging on top of each other when Peridot pushes Amethyst out of the way. Am I meant to be thinking, is there a bit of a love story blossoming between those two? Am I not meant to be thinking that? I'm intrigued beyond intrigued. Were you thinking there was potentially a love story? Is it just a friendship?
Well,
what's the happily haps?
I can tell you for sure that when they said that did not occur to me. I'm saying nothing of what I would have thought, obviously, further down the line, if that is or isn't a thing. It is interesting, though, that you sort of, the question you asked wasn't, does that become a thing? The question you asked was, am I meant to think that's a thing?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, are they laying that groundwork? So you're sort of a la Jim and Pam.
Yeah. So you're sort of asking me the question is: are the writers hinting at something they're going to deal with later, or is that something you've picked up from it? And obviously, sadly, as someone who's seen further ahead, I cannot sadly confirm or deny.
You do wonder with those things sometimes. Sorry to interrupt, but you do wonder with love stories and TV shows with that, like how often it's the writer's intent and how often the fans go, "Oh, is it this?" and they go, "Okay, we better make that." For example, not 100% sure, like a few other people that in Arrow, Olivia and Felicity were always written to be together.
I'm assuming you mean Oliver, not Olivia.
Oh, sorry, Oliver and Felicity. The Office, Jim and Pam clearly were. So you kind of, you have to wonder sometimes. And if other people said that with this, then maybe it happens. I don't know. And but it definitely, and I couldn't put my finger on it until I thought of the Harry Potter example. I was like, right, that sums up. Like, am I just reading too much into it, or do you think that's a fair comparison of that moment?
I think for me to answer that would potentially be a spoiler, but I will say that having just watched it like you and hearing that interpretation of it, I cannot tell you that you are wrong to have thought that there's a chance that could be what they're hinting at, because you could certainly interpret it that way, but that's not me answering your question directly. I'm simply saying that what I have seen and what you have seen, while you have come up with a different interpretation than what I did when I originally watched it, I can totally see how you got there, and it does track. Whether it's what they're intending and whether it's where it goes, is not for me to say. But I
hope they go that way. I'd love to see a love story blossom on this show, and it would add way more weight to whether she chooses to do a good thing or a bad thing in the future and stuff. But equally, if it's just a friendship, like, it doesn't need to be a love story. If it's just a friendship, then that's also cool. But they certainly, she's fallen out with two people. Peridot has fallen out in the last two episodes with two different people, and they handled the way she fell out with Amethyst very differently to the way she fell out with Pearl. So we shall see.
100% agree. And I will say that, like, that for me, the moment that the apology through the tape recorder is one of my favourite moments of the show, full stop. I love that she can't bring herself to say it, so she records it and plays it back. It's just really well done. and especially the parts at the very last few words, and she says, "I'm still learning. I hope you understand. I want to understand. I'm sorry." And I think that it's so good because it brings up so many different things. So first of all, she's acknowledging, and it's one of the most important elements of this episode for me. She's acknowledging that for the first time that gem culture isn't the be all and end all. The society and the caste system and whatever she's come from clearly has no relevancy here on Earth. And historically, she's been very dismissive of Earth culture and gone, well, that's not how the gems do it, and moved on. But here, for the first time, she's acknowledged that on Earth things are different, and that she needs to at least respect that a little. And that's a big step forward for Peridot, a huge step forward, because she's acknowledged that what she said, while would have been completely acceptable to say on homeworld or within gem society, clearly here her Amethyst's feelings, because that caste system is not relevant here. So I think that's so powerful, and legitimately one of my favorite moments of the whole show. I just really like it. It's beautifully animated as well, that they get the whole thing this weird overcast look. She obviously does it towards the end of the day, so it's got this sort of sunset sort of pink glow to the whole scene, which just gives it so much more weight, and I really love the whole thing. Really well done. And of course the voice actress for Peridot, who once again I have momentarily forgotten the name of her. If you asked me, just if you passed me in the street and went, what's that actress name, it would come out. I would have it, but it has currently escaped me.
Can you, Dan, explain the quartz thing to me?
Okay, I can do my best. I also have very little actual knowledge about how, real world gemstones form and exist. But a quartz is a type of gem composed of silicon and oxygen atoms, apparently. Right? So there is a subset of them. So several gems come under the band of quartz, in real world. Such as rose quartz, which is a real type of quartz, which is a pinky sort of quartz. And there's a bunch of other ones that like blue quartz, and I'm trying to think. There's a one called ametrine, which I've never heard of, but there you go. And then there's a bunch of other ones, and they all look different, and they all seem like completely different gemstones. But then there is you might be interested to know amethyst, and potentially even more interested to know. It's very closely related to jasper. Jasper is also a quartz. So the implication here from what Peridot says is that you're a quartz, you're a soldier. So the implication is in gem society, the role assigned to quartz gems is soldier, which when you think about how we've seen Rose depicted with the shield and sword, makes a surprising amount of sense. If Amethyst was bigger and broader, would she not look a fair bit like Jasper?
Yeah, well, and Rose, to be fair.
Yes, also, yes, absolutely. So I think the implication here is interesting, because it sort of says that the gem class system does also take into account the family lines, or the sort of the gem sort of, the gemology of it all. So the fact that the rose quartz and amethyst and apparently jasper, although jasper seems to be a slightly different one. It's referred to as a microgranular quartz jasper. So I don't think it's as directly a quartz for whatever reason as an amethyst or a rose, but it is also a quartz. I think that they take that into account, evidently, in gem society, because they're similar for whatever reason.
I bet you could get so many hints as to where all of this is going and I'm not going to do it because, who's got the time? But, there must be fans, that just went through and learned all about 100%. Gems to try and piece together.
Well, to the point where fans have started designing non-introduced gems.
That's amazing.
So they'll see a gemstone listed that hasn't shown up yet, and then they will design what that gem might look like in the show, and some of the artwork is incredible, legitimately fantastic. You know, and there
That's
there
awesome.
are so many kinds that we haven't seen yet as well. So it's you know, there's when the show first started, and I was like, oh, they're all named after like various, and I'm thinking, okay, Pearl, and that's a thing that I know of, and Opal is a thing I've heard of, and a Ruby's a thing I've heard of. Great, this all makes sense. And I started thinking, God, at some point they're going to run out, surely. And then I saw the list of how many different stones exist, and I'm like, oh no, they'll never run out. They could never introduce this many characters.
But do our versions of gems exist in this universe?
What do you mean?
Would we ever see a character wearing a pearl necklace or a diamond ring?
Oh God, you know what? That literally never occurred to me. Oh wow, yeah. I guess they must do, right? Like the physiology of the Earth isn't different, I suppose.
If we've never seen it within any character, then
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That's an interesting point. So it's that's all interesting, and it does hint. The biggest thing I take from this though is connecting all the stuff we learn here about the caste system with what we already know. So Jasper actually called Amethyst the first time they met an overcooked runt. And obviously Peridot reveals here that she did stay in the ground too long and came out too small.
Hence that nickname.
What's that, sorry?
Hence that nickname, hence what she said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then there's also so basically you can infer a few things now. So Peridot confirms that on Homeworld there's a caste system and there are potentially hundreds of pearls, and they are basically custom-made servants. They're inherently low ranking, but they are a status symbol for higher ranking gems who possess them. That's what she essentially hinted at. Peridots are clearly a technical caste, ranking higher than pearls, but low enough that it would be unusual for them to own a pearl. Because at one point she goes, "Me own a pearl?" Like that. So we know that Peridots rank higher than pearls. Peridot confirms in this episode that quartz-type gems are a soldier caste and therefore outrank Peridots and pearls. So you can keep sort of implying, like, the question now becomes like, oh, where does a ruby land in that? Where would a sapphire land in that if that was a thing? So and higher class you are there less of you? You know, if there are hundreds of pearls because they're a low class, are there slightly less than that of Peridots, or whatever. So there's a lot of potential implications you can take from some of the things said in this episode. There's a huge amount of homeworld knowledge coming.
If there's other rose quartz, are they all Stephen's aunts?
Yeah. Or is rose quartz a top tier general sort of soldier gem, and therefore there were only a couple?
I don't know.
This is what I'm saying. Like there's so much left to know, but these last two episodes have given a huge amount of hints at like how gem and homeworld society. And then there's the other big implication, which would also explain Jasper's disgust at Garnet, which is that early on in the episode that the permafusion, as she calls it, of Ruby and Sapphire makes her uncomfortable. Suggesting that Homeworld Gem Society would definitely not approve of.
He criticized. Someone, I think it's Jasper, say to Garnet, "What is this abomination?" or something. So that's been hinted at before, I think, as well. Were you a little bit though? Like, I mean, we've seen a lot of Peridot and Garnet. Do you think they should have introduced that earlier, or?
That's a fair point. I don't know. Have we seen that much of Peridot?
I think it's fine because they're now working together, and that's what's really she's not just fighting her now or anything. It's
because that's what she says, isn't it?
They're experiencing each other on a day-to-day level.
Yeah, because that's what she sort of says. They're not just fusing to fight. They're staying that way. So, like, she's sort of implying that on Homeworld, fusion is used, but mostly for combat situations. Whereas the permanent fusion is part of the issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny because when me and Nadia first watched Jailbreak, and discussed it, I said it was interesting because it was sort of, to me, it was a bit of an analogy for being in potentially in a minority of some description, for us, and in reality, because you could look at it maybe as an analogy for what it must be like to sort of be in a society where maybe being gay was considered it would make some people feel uncomfortable
It's absolutely a parallel for that. I think.
So I think that the implications there are really interesting as well. Obviously, Earth a little bit more accepting of a fusion than Gem Homeworld. So yeah, plenty of stuff.
It depends on your location and experiences. Unfortunately, tragically, but yeah.
Oh no, I meant being in favour of a fusion, because obviously on Earth we don't know what fusion is. That to be enough to be disgusted by it. I was.
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, obviously, obviously, there are still plenty of places on this planet, tragically, that people would still be persecuted for being gay, and that is, I would not be dismissing that. No, I'm saying that when Garnet lands on Earth, she's not receiving the prejudice she would receive on Homeworld as a fusion, because the humans don't. She's a gem to most people.
I get the impression she's always been accepted by Pearl and Amethyst and 100%. Rose, and that was what drew them together. What were your other more general episode notes, Dan?
It's a really good one. I like this episode a lot. I think it does a really good job of getting some humor in, then having some like sort of deep stuff about like Gem, sort of the mythology of it all, and then of course a really, really good sort of dramatic payoff, because we know Amethyst is touchy about it. It all actually just comes together so well, because we know Amethyst is touchy about her origins, and her going to the kindergarten with Peridot was bound to bring up that stuff. I mean, geez, her and Pearl fought when she went back to the kindergarten last time, so it's clearly a hot button subject. So sending her there with Peridot, a gem that is very likely to push her buttons, someone she's not even like close with, and she's obviously lived with Pearl for many hundreds of years now. So if it caused Pearl and Amethyst to fight when they last went there, I mean, God, you can only imagine how Peridot might trigger her. And then of course this great dramatic payoff of Peridot finally sort of learning and apologizing, and I think that's really, really, really cool too. This is a great episode, a really brilliant one. There's a few other little tidbits though from the episode that I thought were interesting. For example, the drill they find is the drill that collapsed in On the Run when Amethyst and Pearl were fighting. They removed the drill from the one they actually brought down in that episode, which I think is a really neat little,
continuity thing.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Pearl requests tungsten for the outer shell of the drill, and that is actually apparently, I saw this on a trivia page for this episode, that apparently that's a legitimate metal to use because it is highly dense and it has a very, very high melting point. So it would, if you were heading towards the center of the Earth in those sort of heats, it would be one of the ideal metals to make your drill out of. Sorry,
I did wonder when, sorry to interrupt you, but when she was requesting that and they were useless, I wondered if this episode was taking us to Greg, because we've seen before that Greg and Pearl work on stuff and work on it with a bit more ease than, I mean, they fall out, but they work on it with a little bit more ease than other people. So I wondered if I was like, are we gonna get Greg and then see what Greg and Peridot looks like and stuff. So I'm hoping they still do that. That was my thought watching it, where it was going, but yes. I prefer where we went. But yeah,
yes. The title card was the Barnyard, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Also, Peridot states that Pearl is prone to spontaneous singing, crying, and singing while crying, which is a weird meta joke about how frequently the characters cry and sing on this show, which I thought that was great. I really like that one. What else? There's a couple of other little tidbits. It's an interesting episode. Oh yeah, apparently Peridot has referred to her fingers as touch stumps before in the episode Friendship, which I thought was nice. Let's see, any other relevance? I think that's everything. Oh yeah, Peridot earlier in the episode says this is the third rotation of the Earth since the commencement of a collaborative approach to stopping the cluster. So you can argue potentially 3 days have passed since she first agreed to work with the gems.
Oh, that's cool.
It sounds about right, considering how much time we've seen pass with her. We know at least a day passed where they built robots, fought them, and then it was night by the end. So that's at least 1 day. I also love as well, there's a hint, because in I think it was When It Rains, Garnet talked about putting Peridot on a leash, and I love that this week she actually just did that.
It was that whole bit where she first said it to Garnet, and then everyone looks at like Stephen in particular just was like, "Uh-oh," and like that was really nicely and swiftly
the dialogue is great, because literally it's like she says that the permafusion makes her uncomfortable. Garnet ties her up, and then they're like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Yeah, Peridot being free makes me uncomfortable." And
so nicely done.
Although what's funny about that is the 3 days she's been loose and running about, it sounds like. So you could have put her on a leash sooner if that was your concern.
No, but she didn't. She didn't insult her in the fusion earlier. So.
No, I know, absolutely. I know that's the real reason is that she's been insulted by it. I know. I was just kidding. So yeah, no, there's so much to love in this episode. A bunch of, like I said, gem stuff. I'm sure later on, Chris, you'll be on the Wikipedia page for real world quartzes, looking at how they're composed.
I would, but I'm going to go see Blade Runner.
Yeah, which even I haven't seen yet. I'm quite jealous.
For context, that's when we're recording this, 2049, Blade Runner 2049 has only just come out. So.
Where are we? The 8th? We're the 8th of October.
Yeah, I believe it's just bombed in the US. Just had a miserable Friday night opening in the US, I believe, is where we are.
Yeah. So guess what, guys? Next up, it's another bomb!
Hooray! A Happy New Year bomb.
A Happy New Year bomb. So from January the 1st, we are doing the bomb that was known in its promotional material as Stephen's birthday week.
Okay.
Bomb 4, Stephen's birthday week. Bomb 4 of, I think, 6?
I'd have called it Stop the Cluster Before It Destroys the World. But I suppose they've done something a bit more concise.
Mm-hmm. And obviously this bomb leads into the season finale.
Yeah, that was my assumption. Hence that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I will get to it at the time. But I think that this is another example of where they got a bit screwed with Cartoon Network keep changing the length of the seasons, because in the first season they had a big middle middle double episode that was intended to be a bit of a finale, and then they were like, nah, the season's 52. Yeah, and then they're like, actually the episode's 52, and then Jailbreak Return became the finale, and there was just this weird high point in the middle. So it seems like with season 2, they were like, well, we won't go too crazy in the middle because, it'll be a 52-episode season. And then they clearly found out, nope, we're back to 22. Or 26 or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a bit, this bomb I love for many reasons, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But don't expect Mirror Gem Ocean Gem in terms of, or even, and certainly don't expect Jailbreak in terms of the sort of way this season wraps up.
Okay.
Just to curb some expectations going into this one. We get to the big stuff you're hoping for and expecting, but just a bit further down the line.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just thought setting some expectations here would be probably a good idea.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Not a bad shout.
Yeah, just in case. So, cool. That's everything then for this episode. We will see you guys on the 1st of January for Bomb 4, Stephen's birthday week, which starts with the episode The Answer. So yeah, that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Dillon.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll speak to you next time as we discuss The Answer. DuckTales, woo!
When this boy meets world. Good times.